Okay, at this point I do the trimming. Now some people trim prior to adding on the binding. There's two schools of thoughts here. If you trim prior to doing the binding and you don't do the binding the right distance over, you're not going to have a full binding. And this might be a little bit shy, and your binding will have a little more fabric feel versus the batting feel. So I tend to trim all the backing and batting off after I attach the binding, and then that way I have a fuller binding. Okay, now we're ready to cut. I'm going to take my 3/8 inch mark on the ruler, and I'm going to put it right on top of my sewn line. This is going to give me 3/8 inch, and if you look, you'll see that I do extend a little bit beyond the fabric, and this is going to give me a fuller binding. Okay, let's make our cut. Again, check our 3/8 inch on the sewn line all the way up, and once you've done, let's trim up our block. I'm going to again measure this on the 3/8 inch line. Now our corners also need to be trimmed. Oh, that one looks a little big. I'm going to take, again, I was off track a little bit, so I'm going to trim this down to my 3/8 inch. Our corners also need to be trimmed, so I just take a little bit off of each corner. Then that way, when we turn our binding over, we don't have the bulk. Now, our quilt is trimmed and ready to go. My next little trick is to iron the binding open, which is going to help you secure it to the back. We're just going to take our iron, and I'm going to turn the corner over, and we're just going to press the binding away from the quilt. And I'm not really pressing the corner, just these sides. Now when we go to attach the binding in the back, it'll stay in place for us. Let's go sew. Okay, now I'm ready to secure the binding to the back of my quilt. There are two ways that you can do this. You can either use your machine and fold your binding over and use a zigzag, or you can hand sew it and have the binding be invisible. I like to hand sew it so the back looks as nice as my front. So let's go ahead. I'll show you how I sew it. Okay, so I'm using a needle and a thread, and I made a knot in the end of my thread. First thing I want to do is bury the knot, so I'm going to start my binding down there and pull that through. Notice I came right up in the center of my binding. Once my knot is buried, I'm going to fold my binding over, and I'm going to start sewing. Now normally you would sew with matching thread, but I'm sewing with the black thread so that you can see it. What I did is where this thread comes out, I am entering the backing directly underneath it. I'm going less than a 1/4 inch, coming up, but when I come up, I'm going to come up right in the crease of my binding. This is going to give me an invisible binding. Again, I came up, I'm going to go in the backing right below that, go about a 1/4 inch, a little less, and come up in the crease of my binding. Right below it into the backing, come up in the crease of my binding. Now let's keep going till we hit that corner. Okay, we're just about near the corner. I'm going to take one last stitch, and when I get to the sewn line in the opposite direction, I'm going to take a securing stitch, which is just a tiny little grab at the fabric. Now I have my 45-degree angle here. I'm going to fold the binding right back on itself, and you'll see that I have created another 45-degree angle. At this point, all I'm going to do is take one stitch and grab that corner. This is going to anchor it in place. Now I'm going to go again down on the bottom binding, come up in the crease of the top binding, and I'm going to create just an invisible look, but I'm going to secure that corner. I don't go to the front to secure it. I just go to the corner and then bury my needle, come up in the crease, make sure that your binding covers your thread, and continue on your way. You're going to do this all the way around the quilt, knot it out at the end, and there you have the perfect mitered binding. Thank you for visiting me today. I hope that you have learned some valuable tips for making all your bindings perfect for you. And if you liked the fabric on my blog today, this is called the Ibiza collection, and I designed it for blank quilting. Also, here's one of my newest patterns, and this is called Spice in the Tropics. Please visit my pattern selection at quiltwoman.com. Thank you.